Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another crazy Aulita Heroes figure, as this time we've got ourselves the Carcharodontosaurus, as they just continue to plow through some of the most infamous species out there and create them in their own way, their own super cool way. You can see that these two look like they are absolutely straight out of a horror movie. We have two different versions here, actually, two different size ranges for sure, but the head sculpts are actually a little different between these two. So there is actually another version as well that they've created. So if you do head to the Aulita Heroes website, make sure you're paying attention to which one you're getting, you know, depending on which one you prefer. But these look super, super cool and absolutely horrifying at the same time. If we go ahead and actually we'll bring up the smaller one first. You know what? We'll bring up the bigger one first, because since it's bigger, it'll probably be a little easier to see the detail. Let's just bring the camera up a little bit here, and then bring the head sculpt up, and you can see the head sculpt looks absolutely menacing. When it comes to the Aulita Heroes brand, they have made some pretty horrifying looking dinosaurs. Like, they just look so incredibly cool and so incredibly evil at the same time, but I don't know that they've made one that's quite as terrifying looking as their Carcharodontosaurus. It literally looks like it just crawled straight out of an 80s horror movie, and again, a lot of their figures usually do, but man, does this thing ever look like it, and I love it. You can see the head sculpt has some really nice detail, very nice paintwork. I love the dark tones of color on this, as well as the kind of like slight reddish tints that you see here on the underside. I feel like that really adds to the kind of dark and creepy feel of this figure. You can see the eyes are painted in there. We can also see the teeth sticking out, and the teeth are huge, and again, also quite menacing. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why this dinosaur looks so scary in the grand scheme of things, are these crazy looking teeth that it has. It of course does have an articulated jaw, and you can see the upper and lower jaw articulate, so making it even more horrifying is the fact that you can open the mouth really wide and really get a good shot in there. You can see the throat and everything for the figure, and of course the very large menacing teeth that we have. And like I said, that jaw works really nicely and opens both on the upper and lower jaw, so it gives you a really wide appearance, almost kind of like snake-like in a way. Like, it almost looks like it's dislocating its jaw so it can get more into its mouth, which again is really, really cool. As you move back into the neck, you can see almost like a little bit of like a scoot-like or slightly armored appearance to the back of the dinosaur. You can also see some light oranges and stuff up there, and then you have more of like the golden browns down here on the side. The skin texture looks really, really cool, very rough and rugged, and again, very monster-ish. The underside has a lot smoother of a look, and also again more of those really dark, not even reddish, the more like maroonish tones that we have down there. You do also have articulation in the neck, so you can get the head really nicely to turn left and right, and also up and then down. So you've got a little bit of, you know, range of movement there to really articulate and pose the dinosaur how you would like. As you continue to move down, you can kind of see more skin texture, almost make out like the rib cage right there. Very smooth transition down. You also have, of course, the arms sculpted out quite nicely. We can see the musculature displayed there. We can move the arms forward and back as well, which is pretty much the standard for the Aulita Heroes brand. You can also move them out away from the body and back in a little bit right there. As you move down into the fingers, you can see the fingers are sculpted out, and you also have some claws sculpted out that do have a bit of a genuine sharp look to them, which is also nice. As we move back up into the back, again, we continue to have that sort of like armored look following along the back of the dinosaur. Leading down, we also have more of those sort of armored scoots leading into the leg, but more kind of traditional scales back here on the back of the thigh. As we lead down, we've got a big bulging calf muscle back here, which is highlighted with a lighter tone of color, and then you have more of the armored sort of look there on the front of the leg. As you lead into the foot sculpt looks really good. We kind of have like some scoots down the toes, as well as the claws, and the claws do have a bit of like a dark tone, but then kind of like a gold sort of dry brushed over them. As far as the articulation in the leg goes, you've got really nice, very smooth forward and back articulation, also out away from the body and back in a little bit. You as well have knee articulation, which works very nicely, and then ankle articulation, which also works very nicely. And I think, yes, you can swivel that area as well. And then you lead back up and out into into the tail, and as you can see, we continue to have pretty much the same style of skin texture, same style of coloration and everything the entire way out. You've also got a few joints of articulation as you lead out there into the tail, so you can articulate the tail really nicely, as you can see. You can also go up and down as well, so lots of articulation as far as that area goes. And then you, of course, see the same thing again over here, since it is a fully posable, articulated figure. You know, each side should look pretty much as it does on the other side, but super, super cool Carcharodontosaurus. You can also see that the head kind of moves up and down as well, so you can kind of get like this sort of like an angry sort of a look, like it's charging, which is really neat. Then we also have this smaller version, and the smaller version is pretty darn cool as well, but the head sculpt is a little bit different. The teeth are kind of like, the teeth on the lower jaw pretty much the same, it looks like, but the teeth on the upper jaw are kind of like held into the mouth a little bit more than the other ones were kind of like out on the outside of the mouth. But you do still have very nice articulation, though on this one you can see only the lower jaw articulates, but it does articulate really nicely. The larger one does have a little more articulation. As you move down, the skin texture and everything seems to be pretty close to what we saw in the other one, maybe slightly different, definitely different as far as the color scheme goes. You do have like a gray sort of a tone, like a dark gray dry brushed over the top here and applied to the top, and then you also have more of those sort of like maroonish tones, but also other variation of color, as well as a dark tone, you know, kind of like a dark wash, which they do quite often on their figures, helping to again just add some realism to it. As you move down, you do have neck articulation, again side to side and also up and down, so some nice articulation there. You can also swivel it a little bit to kind of get some head tilts. As you move back again into the body, you do also have arm articulation forward and back, also out away from the body a little bit. You can see the fingers again looking pretty good as you lead down. A little bulkiness on that claw, but for the most part, again, they do have some really nice kind of sharp looking claws. As you lead back, we continue to again have pretty much the same style of skin texture and everything, but as you lead back, you of course also have articulation in the legs, forward and back, also out away from the body a little bit. Same deal with the knee, forward and back, and then again with the ankle, forward and back, and also swivel. So the same style of articulation as the other. You can see the claws are painted with a black on this one. Also, we do have dew claws on the figure, which yes, the other one does as well. I just forgot to point that out. But then you continue to lead out into the tail. You do have a little bit less articulation out here on the smaller one, but pretty much the same amount of articulation, really, as far as like, you know, the ability to kind of move the tail around and pose it. So it looks really cool as well, and it's fun to have two different size ranges for this incredibly, incredibly horrifying but absolutely epic Carcharodontosaurus. As far as a size goes, for the smaller one, lengthwise, you are looking at about 8 inches or around 20.5 centimeters. As far as a height goes, you are looking at around just a hair under 3 inches. Of course, since it is an articulated figure, you could prop it up higher, but in the position it's in, just a little under 3 inches or around 7.5 centimeters. And then for a height on the larger one, now obviously this is in a bit of a different position as it's kind of leaning upward. I'm going to have to turn it around, I think, because it'll just be easier to measure it. So lengthwise here, you are looking at just shy of 11.5 inches or around 29 centimeters. And then for a height, about 4.25 inches or a little over 10.5 centimeters, heading toward 11, but not quite there. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon in the Collect A Human Being next to our Carcharodontosaurus figures, and you can see again that none of them are particularly gigantic, definitely a bit smaller than a lot of the older Aulita Heroes figures, but that just means it's easier to fit them into your collection. We also have a comparison with the Carnosaur T-Rex that they recently released, and as you can see, that figure is of course a bit smaller, and exactly the same case when I bring in the Mosasaurus, which as well is a bit smaller. But if I bring in a standard Wild Roar figure from Mattel, you can see that that figure is significantly larger than both of these Carcharodontosaurus. Which means we have to go a bit smaller as we bring in the Velociraptor here, which you can now see is a bit closer in size, but obviously the Carcharodontosaurus, especially the larger one, is still a bit bigger than the Mattel Raptor. So these brand new Aulita Heroes Carcharodontosaurus figures are super, super cool. Again, definitely one of the most fun designs that I've seen from them, and also one of the most terrifying designs. I like that you can absolutely see elements of the Carcharodontosaurus, but in a very very stylized and quite creepy way. I think he's done a really good job on the sculpt and the fine detail, as they usually do. I also love the fact that, again, they've made this with such an eerie and monstrous design. It really is the type of Carcharodontosaurus that you would see if one happened to have been portrayed in some sort of like a dinosaur horror movie in the 80s. This is pretty much what I would expect it to look like. It also, of course, does feature some really nice articulation that works quite well, and of course also allows you to pose and display the figure in really fun ways, and you have really nice paintwork. And that's something you'll always find, I think, when it comes to the Aulita Heroes figures, is really smooth transitions, lots of paintwork, lots of different variation of color added to bring them to life in a really nice way. So if you are interested in these, I will include a link in the description to the Aulita Heroes store, where you can head on over there right now and grab them as long as they are available. If they are not available, just keep checking back. They should be again sometime soon. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.